Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Tech for Good live stream. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2020. It is 5 p.m. CET, 4 p.m. with Chris there in Northern Ireland. If
Hi.
you're on the east coast of the US, it is 11 a.m. If you're on the west coast, you probably know it's 8 a.m. Good morning. So we have some fascinating stories coming up for you this morning. Before we get into that, I'll just give you a brief introduction in case you don't know who I am, and then I'll ask Chris to introduce himself. My name is Tom Raftery. I work for SAP. I am a Global VP, Futurist and Innovation Evangelist, and I have a love of all things tech and all things sustainable. Chris, do you want to tell the good people who are you?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for having me again. So my name is Chris Kernaghan. I am I'm an SAP consultant with a global SI. I have a real fondness for technology. I often refer to myself as a digital magpie because I'm always chasing that next shiny thing. And so this is one of the highlights of my week. So it's to be here, chat with you, and have a great look in on some of the fascinating stories out there.
Fantastic. And we have some cool stories. Before we get to that, I see Rhonda has joined us. Rhonda, great to see you. Thanks a million for saying hi and dropping in. I hope you enjoyed the stories. The stories we have today, we have less than the last couple of weeks because two reasons. Well, one reason really. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour, and the last couple of weeks we went over the hour. So we're going to try and keep it to fewer stories this week. I'll try and spread it out there. Oh, there's Peter joining us as well. Hey, Peter, how you doing? Good to see you, man. We start off as always with climate, just to set a bit of context. And I think this is a really interesting story. This was this in Quartz? I think this was in Quartz. As always, I will be posting these slides afterwards. So if you come back to this posting and see the recording, there will be a link there to these slides, along with the notes in the slides with, clickable links to the sources of these articles. You didn't get the notification, hence visit the profile. Okay. Sorry about that, Peter. Not sure why that was. This story talks about why climate is going to become, or has already become, and is becoming an increasingly important part of the financial system. It talks about how the US Fed and the EU banking system have both prioritized climate risk and are now requiring reporting of climate risk. And it's something that this whole area of ESG, it's called, environment, social, and governance, is becoming a real important part of investors and investment portfolios. Investment risk managers are now looking for information from organizations around their ESG reporting, and money flows or capital flows are now being diverted away from carbon intensive stocks into lower or zero carbon stocks. And it marks a huge change. And of course, it's all to do with money, isn't it? If a company's share price, or if they're priced to buy, if their price to get loans goes up, this is going to be a big problem for them. I had a guy called Paul O'Connor on the Climate 21 podcast last week, or 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago it was. Really impressive guy, great podcast. He heads up the ESG debt capital markets for JP Morgan, and he talked a lot about this as well, which is why I know a little bit about it. It's not an area that I know a huge amount about, investment portfolios and things like that. Not my area at all. But he explained it really well in that podcast, and this article goes into a lot more detail about it as well. And in fact, the Climate 21 podcast tomorrow, I have another excellent episode coming out on ESG as well, so watch out for that. Chris, any comments on this?
Well, it goes back to what we talked about last week with with E&Y, setting that climate targets within their own organization.
Yeah.
And as I comment, these folks are advising government organizations, non-government organizations, and you can see it coming through with all of these things, and it is just fantastic to see that the requirement for the reporting and what that will actually drive, especially from a data point of view, it's going to be fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
It really is. And I mean, you talked about E&Y. I will be talking to them on the Climate 21 podcast shortly. I also recorded a podcast this morning with the head of climate and sustainability for BCG, and they were talking about their Climate Zero initiative, and they're going to carbon negative by 2030. So, some really impressive stuff happening there. Over in the comments, we see Adrian saying hi as well. Hi, Adrian. How you doing? Nice to see you. Runaway reinvestment portfolios. Yeah, you're right, Peter. Back in the time when we had checkbooks, I used to say I couldn't balance a check, never mind a checkbook. This whole investment and finance thing, I just don't have that money gene. I know nothing about it. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But like I said, even despite that interview I did with Paul O'Connor on Climate 21, it really made sense just in how he explained it. He's a really good communicator. If you have any interest in that kind of stuff at all, I would advise you to check out that podcast if you haven't already. I mean, I assume you have. In the energy space. Now, this is phenomenal. This is a project that I've been following for a number of years. It's called Sun Cable, and it's in the Northern Territories, Australia. And they're going to build a 10 gigawatt solar farm there. Now, for context, a gigawatt is roughly the output of a nuclear power plant, a nuclear reactor. This is a 10 gigawatt solar farm. It's larger than any solar farm that has yet been dreamt of, never mind created. And they're going ahead with it. A 10 gigawatt solar farm, but get this, it's going to have 30 gigawatts of battery storage sitting beside it. Now, it's only a couple of years ago that the largest battery storage facility in the world was the Hornsdale Battery Reserve in South Australia, which was 100 megawatts. Was the largest. They've since increased that to 150. This is going to be 30 gigawatts of storage. I mean, just 300 times larger. Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And what's even more insane about this project is they are using it, A, to power the city of Darwin. And, that's okay, nice. But B, they're drawing a 3,500 kilometer cable up north to power Singapore from it as well. I mean, it's just the sheer audacity of the ambition of this project is astounding, and it's being funded by people like Mike Cannon-Brookes, the guy from, is it Jive? So it just insane. And the only way that projects like this can even be dreamt of is because of the cratering cost of batteries and solar. Renewables in general. They're far cheaper now than any form of fossil fuels, which is why you could never build a plant like this powering it from gas or any kind of fossil fuel. It would be too expensive, but even if for some reason the price of gas dropped to the point where it wasn't that expensive, the price of gas or coal or any of these things is volatile anyway based on market conditions. The price of solar is not. Once you've built the panels, the price is flat from there on out. There's no volatility at all.
Well, what was it? 4 weeks ago, we talked about the Abu Dhabi 2 gigawatt project, which hit a massive milestone. Okay. We're now looking at, the milestone of a 10 gigawatt facility. That's 5 times the size. And that interconnect is just nuts. That is just absolutely phenomenal. That's a very thick cable. That's a very, very thick cable. But it's
I was just going to say I was involved in the build out of I was a co-founder of a data center in Cork at the CIX, and I remember seeing the 1 megawatt cables and the thickness of those 1 megawatt cables.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah.
a 10 gigawatt. Well, they won't ship the full 10 gigawatts, I'm sure, but close enough.
Yeah.
Claire is asking in the comments, what's the cost of the project and what's the payback? Excellent questions, Claire. And honestly, I don't know, and I don't think that they are listed in the article.
No, they're not.
But this, as I said, it's being privately funded. A large proportion of it is being privately funded. 2 portions of the Australian governments have given it special status as well to get it through regulatory. But it is being privately funded by, as I said, Mike Cannon-Brookes, amongst others. So, this isn't being done for any form of charity. It's not being subsidized, none of that. This is a commercial enterprise. It's setting out to make money. So they wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't going to be a payback. I don't know what the payback period is. I don't know. I've read a couple of articles about it, but I've never seen that.
Yeah, and also the cost, the kilowatt hour cost isn't detailed in the article either, but it is 350 rolls FTs going forward, and expected injection of 8 billion US or Australian dollars into their regional economy. So that's not an insubstantial amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and just the fact that they're powering the local cities, and the jobs it's going to create. They'll have to build interconnectors there within Australia as well. I remember a few weeks ago we were talking about Tasmania and Tasmania's ambition to go 200%
that's right
from renewables, and
carbon negative.
This is the same kind of idea. Some countries here in Europe are talking about going 100% from renewables by 2050 and thinking, oh, this is awesome, whereas Denmark's at 150 already, and Tasmania is going for 200, and this will bring Australia close to 100, if not beyond, albeit they'll be exporting most of it.
It's a fascinating turnaround from where they were with their previous civic administration.
Yeah, this is being done privately. There's no way this would be done under the federal government, given the politics of
I suppose.
The local governments are doing well, but the federal government in Australia is a disaster. Anyway, we've 2 stories here on BP. There's Anne. Hey, Anne, how you doing? Nice to see you. Anne Hoyer. I don't know if you know Anne, Chris. She just dropped in to say hi as well. Hey, Anne.
I've seen that.
So Anne is ex-SAP, now out on her own, set up a very cool industry, very cool business where she's doing sales for people. So very nice. BP. I was saying BP, 2 stories on them. So the first one talks about how they've sold a huge stock of gas they have to Thailand, to a company in Thailand.
Yep.
Now, that's fine. It talks about how they're getting out of fossil fuels, and then you see them buying into offshore wind. And at a huge stake as well. They've put a $1 billion US into a 50% stake in a 2.5 gigawatt offshore wind park in the US, in the eastern US. So they have BP have said they are going to be carbon zero by 2050 out to their scope 3 emissions. So it's really I'm being told to up the volume on my mic. Sure. Volume up. I hope that's better.
Okay. Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm going to turn you down a bit.
Sorry about that. Oh, my volume is half at that. Chris's. Okay. Sorry about that, Peter. Yeah, we should have coordinated that before we started. I had mine turned down because I was recording a podcast earlier and I needed to turn it down. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, on we go.
Okay.
Yeah, BP, they're selling off a lot of their fossil fuel stuff and they're buying into renewables, and it's all part of their plan to be net zero out to scope 3 by 2050. I'm in contact with some of the BP folks. I'm trying to get them onto the Climate 21 podcast as well. I've got one of their exec board members has agreed to come on, so that should be an interesting one. I just need to line up calendars to get that going now.
It's interesting when you actually look at that. that is a $2.6 billion sale as part of a $25 billion divestment. To put that into context, that is 10% of BP's market cap at the moment.
Yeah,
that's how much they're actually divesting. 10% of their market cap,
and that's
into renewables.
That's really impressive because,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at any of the other super majors, none of them are doing anything at that order of volume
No,
at
exactly.
all. So no, it really is. Peter is in full blizzard mode. Are you on the East Coast of the US, Peter? Because I seem to recall that this morning hearing that there's a big blizzard hitting the Northeast US. So I know you're Air Canada, ex-Air Canada, so I assume you're East Coast if you're in full blizzard mode.
Yeah.
On we go, emissions. I thought this was very cool. Nissan are announcing that they're cutting their carbon footprint by doing closed loop manufacturing on their aluminium. And that's all about, the whole circular economy thing. So first of all, they're swapping out panels on their vehicles from steel to aluminium. Aluminium is obviously lighter. So
yeah.
Peter's in Montreal. I was in Montreal. We had this conversation already. I'm losing it. Aluminium is obviously lighter than steel, which means you get fuel savings straight up just from switching to aluminium. And then if you start taking back the waste of the aluminium from the manufacturing and using this to create more aluminium and recycling it from vehicles as well, they want to get to 90% recycling from their aluminium, and that way significantly cut the carbon emissions associated with making that aluminium, because aluminium is a hugely carbon intensive product because it takes really high temperatures to melt that bauxite and smelt it into aluminium. But if you can just get it from aluminium already, it uses far, far less energy. So using recycled aluminium and B, using aluminium means that you are reducing your carbon footprint by using recycled aluminium, and you're using your users, or you're reducing your users' carbon footprint by giving them vehicles with aluminium in it. So
it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but aluminium is more recyclable than steel.
Yes,
so
it is.
It's easier to recycle, and that's where a lot of the benefit actually comes from, because I think it's not infinitely recyclable, but you can put it through more cycles than steel.
It's close to infinitely recyclable. It is.
Yeah.
In the transportation space, and I mean, we could have shoehorned the Nissan one into the transportation space as well, I guess. In the transportation space, Volkswagen are saying that they're building a battery recycling pilot project in a place called Salzgitter, I suppose you would pronounce that. And this is something that is often raised about EVs, electric vehicles, is the issue of the recycling of the batteries. And it's a bit of a red herring to start with, because the batteries in EVs go on forever. They're not like the batteries in our phones or in our laptops. They go through far more charge cycles before they lose any amount of range at all, or any amount of capacity at all. And the reason for this is because they're completely coddled. They're coddled because they're such a big proportion of the vehicle, both physically and financially. And so you want to make sure that they don't lose capacity. So these things have charge cycles. They can go through thousands of charge cycles without losing any capacity. And so, the CEO of Nissan recently was quoted as saying that the data from their vehicles shows that their batteries can go 22 years, have a useful life of 22 years, whereas the bodies of the cars, he says, have a useful life of about 10 years, so right there. Yes. But anyway, Volkswagen are thinking ahead, and they're thinking that, they're now selling hundreds of thousands of EVs a year. And so in 10 years' time, they will need to take some of them back and start recycling them. And so they're putting plans in place about that. The biggest issue, there is an issue with recycling batteries, and that is true, but not EV batteries. The biggest issue with recycling lithium-ion batteries is around the batteries from our phones and our laptops. But there will come a time when the ones from cars will need to be recycled as well. But they quote Herbert Diess, the CEO of Volkswagen, in this article, and he talks about the fact that they're going to take the batteries from the cars and then they're going to put them into things like stationary storage in grids and industrial uses. And it's only when they have gone through as many charge cycles as they can that they will take them in. And they don't expect this factory to be up and running in volume until the end of the decade, which says a lot about how confident they are in the batteries that they're producing. So Peter's saying, indeed,
no, go on ahead.
The melting cars a few years ago when they had significant contaminants that caused them to fully rust apart in a couple of years. Ouch. Oh wow.
Oh yeah, that's me. But no, we talked about this before we came on air, that when you're looking at power banks and things like that, the battery is not likely to discharge to the same degree as it would do when it is in an EV. So
when it's in a house, when it's in a car, yes, you will drive it from maybe 90 down to 10 maybe, or something like that. Whereas in a house, exactly, unless you get a power cut for a couple of days, you probably wouldn't do that.
Exactly. And so it fits really, really nicely with that sort of proportion used over on a daily basis, and so it just makes very, very it's a very excellent way to think about it. Yeah. So I mean, like it a lot.
In the ID3, the kind of mid-range size battery there is 58 kilowatts usable, and if that were to lose 20%, it would be down to maybe 45 kilowatts. Usable, and that would be after a long life to lose 20%. That'd be a couple of 100,000 kilometers at least, probably closer to 500,000 kilometers. It would be down to maybe 45 kilowatt hours. And of course, the power wall that Tesla sells at the moment for the home is 14. So you're looking at a capacity of 3 power walls right there.
Exactly.
It's impressive. There's this article in Clean Technica about how fleets will propel the consumer EV market, and it's a nice one as well, because to date what has happened is most of the EVs have come to the consumer space. The likes of the Teslas and the i3s and the Kia e-Neros and these kind of cars, and the Leaf, my own car, the Leaf, these ones. They've very much driven it, pardon the pun, to date. But now that the tech has gotten to the point that it's at, it's suitable for the commercial world. And when it goes into the commercial world, of course, the whole thing flips, because now it starts to make a huge amount of sense economically in the commercial world to deploy EVs. They cost far less. They cost almost the same to buy up front now, and then they cost significantly less to fuel and significantly less to maintain. So the two main costs a fleet manager has is fuel and maintenance. So the fleet managers are going to flip their fleets really, really quickly. And fleet managers anyway are usually buying new vehicles every year. Not completely, but they do swap out vehicles every year. So more and more they're going to go for EVs as opposed to the ICE vehicles. So while at the moment there are more consumer EVs in the market space and the proportion of them sold is higher in the consumer space, that's going to flip very, very quickly. And soon it'll be the fleets that will drive the market. And we even saw it in the US last week with Biden saying that their whole fleet of 650,000 federal vehicles is going to go electric.
Well, that was going to be the point that I was going to make. This is a continuation of that story, in the fact that that government fleet will form a large part of the basis for this story. And it's interesting because it says that the typical passenger car will do about 12,000 miles a year, but a transit bus or truck will do like 60,000. So it will. And when you get into ride share vehicles, again, you're upwards of 50,000 miles per year. So and that's a lot of that's a lot of pollutants that you're not putting into the atmosphere.
And it's a lot of savings for the fleet managers, because it's
exactly.
If it costs you, we'll say 10 cent less per mile, probably more, to drive the EV. If you're doing it for 50,000 miles, I'm not going to do the maths, but it's a lot per vehicle.
Yeah.
I told you it's bad numbers.
Yeah.
Now this is a cool one. Ford are talking about its vehicles running on Google's Android starting in 2023, and this has a number of aspects to it, because Google's ambition in the automotive space is really, really unabashed, for want of a better word.
Yeah, that is true.
They own Waymo, and Waymo's CEO, John Krafcik, has gone on record as saying that they want to power anything that moves on the surface of the planet. So, I mean, if you think back to 2008, 2008 was when Google launched Android, and see what that did to the mobile phone market. And now think forward, 12 years from today, 2033, I suppose it would be, 2033, and think what Google's going to have done to the automotive space, because they are going to want to completely disrupt it. Whether they will or not, it's another matter, but already Ford are saying, oh yeah, sure, come on in, take it over. And they're not the only one. Volvo are doing similarly. The Polestar 2, Volvo's fully electric vehicle, the Polestar 2, is fully powered by Android as well, by Google's Android. Now, I say fully powered. It runs the infotainment system. It runs things like the climate control, all that kind of thing, the charging, but it doesn't run the drivetrain as yet. There's another Google product that is available to do that, but nobody is using that yet, as far as I know, in the automotive space. There are 3 Google products in the automotive space. One that sits on your phone, so and Google Car, or I suppose.
I think it's Android Auto. I think it's
Android
Auto.
Yeah. And then there's the one that sits in the infotainment system. This one, and then there's a third one, and the nomenclature defeats me. I just don't remember. But a quick Google will bring you to the Google site, which will tell you the 3 different names. But this is the mid-tier one, which is going to be, initially at least, the most popular. It's interesting to see, Andreessen was right. Software is eating the world.
It is. It's fascinating because we see what Tesla have done with software, and that has been phenomenal, because arguably the software is as important as the car and the drivetrain itself. That software experience at the user end, not just what controls the car. And at the end of the day, the automotive manufacturers, they're not software development companies. When we both know, for example, Bjorn, who left SAP and then went to VW, that was part of VW's efforts to retool and become a lot better at software development to improve the user experience within the car itself.
And they had huge problems in VW with that. I mean, they wanted to start selling the ID3 last year at the start of the summer, and even that was a delay to the start of the summer, and they couldn't sell it because while they had them manufactured, they were sitting in massive parking lots, couldn't be sold because they didn't have the software right, and they had to rewrite the software from scratch, and they could only start shipping them in September, and already they've done a couple of rewrites of the software, not full rewrites this time, but updates to the software. They're still not doing over the air updates. So now people who've bought the ID3 and soon the ID4 still have to bring them back to the dealer to get the newer version of the software. So, it shows how difficult it is to transition from being a hardware company to a hardware and software.
Yeah, no, it's really, really hard. You know, it's and this is where having, you know, leveraging partners like Google is, you know, does make it easier.
Yeah, but you're giving away
But
the kind of crown jewels, aren't you?
yes, and that's part of the challenge. You know, you're permitting a partner into your ecosystem, and giving them, you know, or giving them a large slice of the pie. And the other thing is that the the when you look at it, you know, would will you be able to choose your infotainment software that you want, or, you know, would people seriously say, you know what, I don't really like the Ford because it's Android. I'd rather have, you know, let's say Apple paired with Volvo, you know, with
Yeah.
Polestar, and said, will you know, would you have the halo effect, you know, by association?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Google, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so am I going to say, you know what, I'm not going to buy a Ford anymore because it's Google? You know, I'm not sure I want them inveigling their way into my life and, you know, finding out where I'm going and what speed I'm doing it at.
Well, this is the thing. There are certain things in your life that are extremely personal. I used to have a Net Atmo, which was a French smart heating controller. Okay, and I liked it because they had a very strong privacy policy.
Mm-hmm.
I switched over to gas heating, and I needed the dual channel heating system, and I had to get a Nest. Okay.
Right.
And I haven't connected my Nest account to my Google account because there are rhythms of my house that are deeply, deeply personal. You know, when people are in, when people are out, you know, where the thermostat is and things like that. Those are deeply personal, and I don't like other people having access to that information. And it would be the same in my car.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, here's a thought experiment for you. So cars, amongst other sensors, have sensors in the seats to detect if someone is sitting in them.
Yep.
So that they know to set off a warning if the seatbelt hasn't been buckled, for example. Mm-hmm. They also, those sensors in the seats can know your weight so that they can differentially change the height of the seat or the space in the seat, or, you know, some cars have these memory functions built into them so that as soon as you sit in, bang, it reconfigures the car for you. Yep. So they're taking your weight. Now, what if you're a woman and the car is weighing you, and it realizes that over the course of a number of months you're getting heavier, and it knows because you're using the GPS, it knows that you're stopping at maternity shops. Suddenly in the mail you start getting letters for maternity products, you know. Just something as simple as that. I mean, these kind of things are very unsettling potentially. You know,
there's a lot of signal in the data, and that is, you know, when you start to put together the rhythms of your life, it you know, the things that can be learned about you are phenomenal. You know, even when we look at just what Cambridge Analytica managed to infer about people based on, you know, questions to stupid quizzes and things like that. You know, and those are just your responses. Those are not actually the things that you do. So yeah, it is fascinating. I've done a couple of big data projects, and the inferences that I've been able to make from data have been quite scary and make me quite cautious. You know, but anyway, I still use Google, so I still have I still have problems with the cognitive dissonance I have over it. So
Yeah. So we have a few comments here. Rhonda saying, growing up in the 70s and 80s, would we have imagined all this? And I grew up in the same period, Rhonda. No, I mean, the things we were worried about then was, you know, the Cold War, you know, was there going to be a nuclear war, all that kind of stuff. Rhonda saying as well, I was outside playing with my brother and getting into trouble. Some of the stories I could tell you there. Oh boy.
Oh yes.
And my kids are saints in comparison. I'm not going to say that to them, obviously, but oh my gosh.
Oh yes.
The kind of stuff I got up to. Claire saying, annoying when you pack your car with shopping when the boot's full. Yeah, that is actually. I put the seatbelt on to avoid the alarm going off when I've got stuff on the seat. But yeah, you're right. It is really annoying. Interesting conversation. Just on Saturday, my buddy turned on his lights using his phone. I said one with the ML, it'll simply turn on at the estimated time you typically did it. It seemed to me, and none in his home. Yeah, totally get that.
I do want the smart lights, but Lorna, my wife is there's a switch there. It's perfectly valid, and I still haven't managed to win that battle yet.
Yeah,
so I still try.
I have a switch on my phone here that turns on my 2 key lights there, the ones just pointed at me for this, and that's handy. But typically, no. The other thing is, if I were to put any smart devices in the home, I would tend to use HomeKit to do it because Apple is more privacy focused, doesn't want your data, is not trying to monetize your data, would get into all kinds of trouble if it was found out that it was looking at your data. Whereas Google, on the other hand, is absolutely architected to take your data. And it would be difficult for them not to take your data because their whole mindset is take all your data and monetize it.
Very much. Very much.
Okay, what else have we got? I love my smart lights. Rhonda's saying change the color based on the mood. Yeah, that's the same with the 2 lights I have here. I can change the color and the temperature and all that kind of thing, and the brightness. Claire's saying with the Tesla, you can program the heating in the car. I can do that with mine too. I have an app on the phone here. I can log into the car, turn on the aircon in advance, make it hot or cold, depending. In summer, I'll make it cold.
I could if I paid BMW more money, but I don't really want that.
Mine's a cheap ass Nissan Leaf, and I can do it.
Yeah. So, there you go. There you go. Go on to the next one. AutoX
is a Chinese kind of Waymo-like company. So Waymo, as we mentioned earlier, owned by Google, are making autonomous cars. AutoX is a Chinese version of Waymo, and they are now deploying their robo-taxi service the same way Waymo has done in Arizona. AutoX are now doing it in China. And I think they've got licenses to operate in California as well, although they haven't started yet. So it's, everyone says that autonomous cars are not coming for another X years,
Oh no.
I think it's more nuanced than that. It's like the Gibson quote: "The future is already here; it's just not evenly distributed." And that'll happen with these autonomous cars as well. They will come to some places before others.
I think the way you probably actually see it, because it depends on where the liability lies in terms of when accidents happen and things like that. But we've talked about fleet management, okay? So where you have large campuses, which are actually all the roads are internal, they all belong to a company. You will find autonomous vehicles very easily in those places. So you will where the control is within the company itself. Pardon?
Mines and ports are great examples.
Exactly. Or large chemical factories, or large-scale solar plants and stuff like that. You will find autonomous vehicles because all the roads are internal, and it's fine. And then as the hours build up and things like that, you will find that they will get out, and it's my kids. Anna has another 10 years before she can drive. Will she drive? Will she learn to drive? I think she will. I would like to see her drive, but certainly her kids, no, probably not.
Yeah, there's a book called what's it called again? The Last Driving License Holder Has Already Been Born, or something like that. So the idea that
I need to renew mine.
May not need to get a driver's license.
Yep.
Peter's saying, only such item I remotely have is my Videotron for cable TV Helix system that actually learns your voice to change the channel. So sadly, I guess I do have ML in the house. And Rhonda's asking a question to you there, I guess, Chris, because I have no idea. What do you recommend for Android users for privacy?
Bucket of sand to put your head in, really, when it comes down to it. You know, like when you have an Android phone, you know, and you've signed up for the Google services, the amount of data that they're actually picking up from it is quite scary. You know, I do like the week in or the month in review, your timeline, where it tells you all the places that you've been, okay, over the course of the last month and things like that. It's as I said, I don't mind the cognitive dissonance. I've come to deal with it, so I have. You know, I post enough on social media and things like that, but there are things that I don't want, and that is you know, things like, you know, when there are people in my house and stuff like that, I just think that's a step too far. When I'm carrying the device with me, it's my choice. So it is. But yes, for Android users, there really isn't an awful lot, Rhonda, I'm afraid. So there's just, you know, deal with it.
Suck it up is your answer, Rhonda. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, yeah, exactly. Anyway,
moving on.
Yes. On the GM.
On a GM, yeah. And this story, and I've forgotten what publication it's in. I think it's in The Driven.
It's in The Drive, yes.
The Drive, okay, there you go. Talks about GM made an announcement at the weekend or late last week to say that they were only going to sell EVs by 2035. And if you actually read the release, you know, it led to a lot of, you know, pieces, including, I mean, some of the people in the comments here were at the Supply Chain Now live stream yesterday afternoon, and they were talking about this story. And of course, it got a lot of frothy articles, but of course, this announcement by GM was aspirational. They said, we want to get to that. They didn't say we are going to. And a lot of headlines were saying they are doing this. They have made this decision. This is happening. You know, whereas it was completely aspirational. This article breaks it down quite well. Of course, lots of governments in lots of countries have already set dates for when they're going to stop selling internal combustion engine vehicles. In Norway, it's 2025. So in, you know, 4 years' time, less than 4 years' time, you will no longer be able to buy an internal combustion engine vehicle in Norway. In many countries like Ireland and the UK, it's 2030. Other countries are 2035. Some are as far out as 2040. But the point is, you know, okay, this announcement is aspirational, but it does send a message, number one. And number two, they don't have a choice anyway. The market's going away.
Yeah.
You know, if they are still manufacturing internal combustion engine vehicles in 2035, I don't think they will be. If they still are, no one's going to be buying them. They won't be able to sell them in most countries. And, you know, nobody will want one anyway. So
well, this is the thing. When you actually look at the brands that they have, you know, you're looking at, you're looking at Chevrolet, GMC, Cadillac, Vauxhall, who else? Holden in Australia. You know, it's an interesting one because in all of those brands, there really isn't one that I think reflects a solid EV. You know, Vauxhall, yes, you know, because they have, you know, some electric vehicles within their range. Chevrolet, there was a good Chevrolet. What was it? I think the Bolt, yeah. But it's not the same way that you would see with some of the other manufacturers. So it's funny because yes, it's an aspirational statement, but it kind of speaks to their lack of progress.
Yeah, the only thing is no other manufacturers made a similar statement. Well, Porsche, that's not true. Porsche, the CEO of Porsche said a couple of years ago that by 2030 they wouldn't be making any new internal combustion engine vehicles. But other than that, none of the other manufacturers have made as bold a statement that I'm aware of. Adrian's saying in the comments, all this technology is good and works well in the first world, but how about third world countries like South Africa? And, you know, that's a really good point. Yeah. But Adrian, what you got to remember is because of all of the legislation now around EVs, I mean, Europe has mandated that manufacturers in the EU have to reduce the carbon emissions from their overall fleet to 95 grams CO2 per kilometre, which is forcing them to do things like go electric the way Volkswagen have done. And you're starting to see the results of that. Things like the Seat brand belonging to Volkswagen, who are the kind of cheaper brand of Volkswagen, and the Skodas as well. They're now producing EVs. Renault have small, cheap EVs as well. You even have the E-Up from Volkswagen itself. Tata, the Indian company, are producing EVs as well that are very, very cheap. Citroën has one called the Ami, AMI, like the French word ami, friend. So that is, what is it? I think it's like 5,000 euros or something like that. So essentially, yeah, if we're talking about Teslas, totally get it's a first world thing. But when we're talking about things like the Citroën Ami, and then you've got India, I mentioned Tata, but all the tuk-tuks in India are going electric now as well because they can and because it's cheaper. Plus, globally, 30% of all new motorcycles sold are now electric. And if you think of the bus fleets now globally are at 33%. So, you know, and bus fleets at 33%, that'll make a huge difference to the air quality in places like South Africa, for example. Peter's talking about using Waze and Google Maps. And you know, good point, Peter. I am an Apple user. I don't have any Google devices. And I use Apple Maps, not Google Maps. And Apple Maps is really good for directions as well. It's got a better UI than Google Maps. But it doesn't track your privacy, and it does tell you about road congestion conditions and things like that as well, so you can see up ahead. So they're just not mapping it down to who the owner of the vehicle is, but they can see that there's a phone, an anonymized phone traveling at 5 kilometers an hour on this motorway, so they know there's a problem and they flag it that way. Miscellaneous, we're almost there, and good, because I need to finish at the top of the hour. Second last story, Microsoft's quantum computer cloud service is now open to the public.
Yes.
And that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
There are a few other companies offering cloud delivered quantum computers. IBM is one, Alibaba is another, AWS have one as well, I think. So there's a few of them out there. I think even some of the startups, Rigetti have one, I think, and a couple of others. So there are a few out there already, but the difference here, of course, is it's Microsoft, and you've got all the programming tools to go with it as well. So if you are a developer used to using Microsoft's development suite, you can now use this to access this cloud-delivered quantum computer, which is amazing. That, you know, if you want to get into quantum computing, this is a really nice way into it. And, you know, quantum computing has incredible potential future uses, I gotta say, you know, in things like materials design, and things like climate and weather, and things like optimization problems. There's lots of places where it can do amazing things. Adrian saying, keep in mind that South Africa has a huge electricity shortage. Yes, that's fair enough. Yeah, the ESCOM have big problems. And I think a lot of that, I don't know, because, you know, I don't live in South Africa. I'm not completely familiar with it, but I know ESCOM are the big power company there. And I know there have been issues there around corporate governance, shall we say, if we want to put it politely. So that is a fixable problem. And it's actually a good problem to have if you think about it for a second, Adrian, because if South Africa had more generation than it needed right now to generate electricity, it would probably be fossil fuel. But because South Africa doesn't have enough, it needs to build a lot more, and the cheapest form of generation to build now is renewable. So you'd probably leapfrog a lot of other countries and go, you know, skip a lot of the fossil fuel problems and go, boom, straight to renewables. Ron doesn't enjoy the show. Yes, woohoo, we have a fan. Somebody's enjoying it, apart from me.
So I'm enjoying it as well. So the quantum one's interesting because I read the other day that they're now looking at networking quantum computers, which is just absolutely nuts, considering how difficult it is to keep the state in as it is. Yeah. But that was just something that just absolutely blew my little cotton socks. But it's interesting that this isn't D-Wave, because D-Wave support, I think, Google and IBM's one. But yeah, D-Wave are definitely on the forefront there. So I must actually have a look at this. I hadn't seen this one yet. So made by Honeywell and IonQ. Right, okay, yes, they use Ion Trap. But yes,
for now,
it seems
but
just
they have their own
weird
entanglement way of doing it, Microsoft, that they haven't shown yet, but they're working on it. It's a slightly different way of doing it. So it'll be interesting when they move to that.
It's one of those ones where you sit and as you said, optimization problems. That is the real that's the real kicker, and so it's just so bizarre to think that even 5 years ago that people were finding it difficult. They were questioning whether quantum computing was ever going to be real, and you can consume it now from a cloud hyperscaler, and you just sit and think, "Whoa, that's brilliant." That's a real Bill and Ted moment.
It is.
So it is.
That is amazing. We're on to the last story. And just before we talk about it, I will say that after this story, I have 2 quick announcements to make. So don't run away. And I'm throwing the don't run away in there because from the comments and from yourself, Chris, I seem to be the only Apple user. And I did say this is the last story, and it's an Apple story. So no, don't run away. There's 2 announcements coming. Hang on a sec. But this story talks about the next version of iOS 14, the Apple operating system for the phones, and the next version of iOS 14, 14.5, which is released at the moment just to developers, not to the public yet. But it will allow Apple users to open their phone while wearing a face mask using Face ID if they happen to be wearing an Apple Watch as well. Now, it's fantastic. It sounds brilliant because wearing a face mask really does slow down the access to your phone unless you turn off Face ID and just use a simple password. But I have an alphanumeric complex password on my phone, and when it defaults to that, then I have to type it in, and it takes a lot longer. So the ability to do it while wearing a face mask, and I do have a watch, so it does make a lot of sense. And in fairness, having the watch is fantastic because it means that I never have to bring my physical wallet with me anywhere anymore. Anytime I'm paying for anything, I just tap the reader with my watch, and boom, payment made. And there's no putting in passwords, because you put in the password once when you put the watch on, and that covers you then for all the payment things like that. So, and it'll cover you now for opening the phone as well. So I think that's huge. Let's see what's happening in the comments there. I hear a couple of dings. Adrian, thanks for the answer. Sai is asking about workforce. I don't know. Adrian, you might be in a position to answer that. Really hope Escom are listening to you and looking into renewable. Yeah, me too. Oh, Claire's Apple. Woohoo! there's 2 of us here, Claire. Well done.
I have to say, I have the Pixel 4, and it has the face unlock, which is great.
It is.
But the Pixel, the fingerprint on the Pixel 2 XL was phenomenal, because it was right at the back of the phone, and it just fitted where your index finger would be. And so it worked so well for me. I wish they would go back to fingerprints, especially given the mask issue. So
and Claire is saying that as well in the comments. They should go back to fingerprints. And in fact, it says it in the article that they are looking at releasing under glass fingerprint readers on the next versions of their phone later this year. So that could be a thing, and it makes a lot of sense as well, given that face masks are going to be a lot bigger part of our lives for.
I love Peter's one. Great marketing. Stick to me. Sell a watch to open a phone.
I'm not going to go there. I mean, the watch is useful for so many more things, But I know. You can do the same with your Google watches, I'm sure. Finally, as I said,
there's no decent ecosystem. It's a very fragmented ecosystem. So it doesn't. It's that software convergence in the iOS ecosystem just is phenomenal. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Two quick announcements, and then we got to go because, as I said, I've got another thing at the top of the hour. And the first thing is what I do have at the top of the hour. It is a chat in Clubhouse. So I'm Kevin O'Donovan, a buddy of mine based out of the south of France, former Intel, is hosting a chat on Clubhouse about hydrogen. So if you are interested in energy and hydrogen and you have a Clubhouse account, do feel free to follow me over there, and we'll be talking about that in about 4 minutes from now. Yep. And the second announcement is I'm doing another live stream this time tomorrow. I'm going to be exhausted. So same time tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, 5 Europe, 4 Ireland and UK. It is an SAP official live stream. I will be talking with a colleague of mine, Keith Zobot, and we'll be talking about design as a critical part of resilient, sustainable supply chains. So it's using design at the start for designing goods for manufacturers, using design to manufacture their goods, for example, for designing for reuse, designing for take apart, designing for whatever it is. So that'll be the live stream going out this time tomorrow, and it'll be going out not here, not on my channel, but it'll be going out on the SAP Digital Supply Chain channel. So if you want to join that, in LinkedIn, look for Digital Supply Chain, the SAP channel, and it'll go live tomorrow, 5 o'clock European. So that's it. Sai is saying yes. Sorry about that, Sai. Clubhouse is iPhone only, yes, for now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I can't do anything about that, I'm afraid. I know Clubhouse has come from nowhere and become incredibly popular, incredibly fast. I mean, they had Elon Musk on yesterday morning, blew away all their records. But because it's so popular, I reckon they'll have an Android version out very soon. Not in time for the Clubhouse I'll be joining in 2 minutes, but there you go. Nothing I can do about that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, we shall say that's all. Thank you, everyone, for your interest and attention and your comments and your engagement. Rhonda's running, but on the treadmill. Okay. Good for you, Rhonda. I wish I had
more than I've done for this week. So,
getting those steps in, or that exercise in. That's another thing the watch is great for, by the way. I have it with me when I'm doing my exercises, when I'm walking and that, and I use it to count all those things, and it keeps great track of that. Anyway, folks, I do got to run. There's Lisa. Wow, Lisa. Hey, haven't seen you in a long time. Not since Portland, Maine, I think it was the last time we met at a Red Monk event. Fantastic. Missed half of it. Yep. Yes, Lisa, it is, because it is a LinkedIn Live, it is kept in place. So as soon as I hit end on this show, you will then be able to come out of it, go back in at the same link and watch it from the start. So thank you for that. Thanks for your interest. Great to see you again. And we'll be running it here this time every week. So feel free to come back next week at 11 Eastern, and put it in your calendar so you don't forget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, folks.
Right. That's us.
That's us. We're out. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris. And we shall see you
Thank you very much.
Week.
See you next week.